She was weeks away from her dream wedding. 5 children, a nursing job, and a man she believed was her forever. But that night, she met a version of him she never imagined. He didn't just take her life, he planned it. But why? What snapped? And what were the signs nobody saw? By the end of this video, you might ask yourself, would I have seen it coming? Dina Taylor was born and raised in Atlantic County, New Jersey, a place she would always carry in her spirit, even after life took her elsewhere. She was the second of 3 daughters, raised in a modest but loving home where discipline met devotion. From a young age, Dina stood out, not for being loud, but for being present. She listened more than she spoke. She gave more than she asked for. And when she entered her teenage years, people began to notice something about her, a natural pull toward helping others. That calling would eventually lead her into nursing, a profession not just built on knowledge but on compassion. She didn't pick it for the paycheck, she picked it because she belonged there. After high school, Dina moved to Prince George's County, Maryland, to pursue both opportunity and a fresh start. It was there she planted roots, began working in healthcare, and started her journey as a mother. She would go on to raise 5 children, often juggling 12-hour shifts with school drop-offs, grocery runs, late-night fevers, and early morning prayers. Each child had a different personality, but all of them shared the same word when asked about her: safe. There was no doubt. She was their rock. Friends describe her as a quiet storm, the kind of woman who didn't need to announce herself to be felt. She had grace in her walk, strength in her silence, and this quiet fire that kept her going even when life demanded more than she had. She wasn't chasing attention. She was chasing stability, a good life, a safe one, for her children, for herself. And then came love, or at least what she thought was love. His name was Deonte Sims, and he didn't show up like a monster. He came in like many men do when they want to be chosen: charming, calm, helpful. He made promises, he blended in, he made himself comfortable, but predators don't always wear snarls, some wear smiles. To the outside world, Deonte seemed like a decent man, someone who knew responsibility. They planned a life together, talked about marriage, built routines that looked just like a family. But behind closed doors, something else was unfolding. Dina never shared much about their disagreements. Maybe she didn't want to worry anyone. Maybe she thought it was just temporary. Maybe she believed, as so many do, that loving someone hard enough can fix what's broken. Because that's who she was. A giver, a believer, someone who knew pain and still chose kindness. That makes this story so much heavier. Because when someone like Dina ends up murdered, it's not just a crime. It's an alarm. It's a siren that says, love isn't always safe, especially when it comes dressed in calm voices and empty apologies. She gave everything to everyone. She asked for so little in return. And in the end, it cost her everything. So how did it happen? How does a woman so full of life, so needed, so cherished, end up lying cold in the street, shot by the very man she trusted most? Deonte didn't walk into Dina's world as chaos. He came in like comfort. And maybe that's why no one saw the danger at first, because it didn't kick the door down. It sat on the couch. It kissed her forehead. It called itself love. He seemed dependable, like someone she could finally lean on after years of carrying everything alone. Dina was a provider, not just to her children, but to her partners. She had been burned before. She wanted different. She deserved different. But Deonte, he wasn't different, not in the way that mattered. Because while he showed her affection, something darker was growing beneath it. Something covert, controlling, calculated. This wasn't a man who lost control in a moment of passion. This was a man whose ego couldn't stand being questioned, whose pride was paper-thin, and whose affection had expiration dates. The second Dina stopped falling into line, there were signs. Not the loud, obvious kind, but the subtle shifts. The eye rolls, the tone when she disagreed, the distance when she didn't comply. That eerie sense of walking on eggshells, but not knowing why. Psychologists call it coercive control. It's a psychological form of abuse that doesn't always leave bruises but always leaves damage. It starts with little rules: what to wear, who to talk to, how long you're out. It disguises itself as protection. I just worry about you. You know how I feel about that. Why are you always trying to fight me? It doesn't happen overnight. It happens drip by drip, until the person you're with isn't just your partner, they're your prison. Dina may have seen glimpses. She may have brushed off things, thinking they were just arguments, just tension, because no one ever thinks the man they love will one day pull a trigger. But Deonte wasn't just troubled. He was boiling inside, and no one knew it. Maybe not even Dina. He wasn't angry because she was cruel. He was angry because she had power, because she was self-sufficient, because she had a life before him and would have had one without him. To a man like Deonte, that's not love, that's threat. And when his mask finally slipped, it didn't fall slowly. It shattered. At this point in the story, pause for a second and ask yourself, have you ever loved someone who made you feel small, just for standing up for yourself? Or maybe you have a friend, a sister, a cousin, someone in a relationship where the control isn't loud, but it's always there. That's not love. That's slow erosion. If any part of this chapter sounds uncomfortably familiar, don't wait for it to get worse. Start the conversation. Send the text. Ask the hard questions. Sometimes the warning signs aren't what they say. It's how they react when you stop obeying. You never really know someone until you say no to them. It was just another Thursday. The date was September 16th, 2021. Dina Taylor woke up in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, likely the same way she did every morning, probably checking her phone, glancing in on her kids, mentally organizing the day ahead before her feet even touched the floor. She had responsibilities, a shift coming up, and a house to manage. But underneath all of that, tension was building. Something had been off between her and Deonte. Friends noticed it, but no one could quite put their finger on it. Little things, changes in tone, shortness in conversation, pauses that used to be filled with laughter. She hadn't said anything alarming, no dramatic warnings, but sometimes people don't scream when they're afraid. They go quiet. Around 4:30 p.m., Dina and Deonte got into an argument. But this time, it didn't end with slammed doors or cold shoulders. This time, it ended with Deonte grabbing a gun. Outside their home in broad daylight, he shot her. Let that sit for a second. A woman who gave her entire life to others, killed on her own street by the man she trusted with her heart. Witnesses said the scene was chaotic. Neighbors screaming, children crying. Someone ran to call 911, but Deonte wasn't done. After the shooting, he didn't run. He went back inside the house and then he barricaded himself. When police arrived, they didn't find a man in shock. They found a man with a weapon in hand firing at officers from inside his home. Think about that. He had just taken the life of the woman he said he loved, and instead of surrendering, he opened fire on the people trying to stop him. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a snap decision. This was a man who knew exactly what he was doing, and he was ready to go down for it. The standoff lasted hours. Police surrounded the house. Neighbors were evacuated. It felt like a war zone. Inside that house wasn't just a criminal. It was a man who had crossed the line from control into full-blown destruction. Eventually, Deonte was subdued, arrested, taken into custody. But by then, it didn't matter. The damage was already done. Dina's body was still on the pavement, lifeless, silent, while her children waited for answers that would never make sense. Can I ask you something real? How many women are walking next to a ticking time bomb right now, smiling for photos, posting anniversaries, pretending it's fine, because leaving feels more dangerous than staying? If Dina's story hits you hard, it should, not because it's rare, but because it isn't. And if you're still here, listening, connecting, feeling that ache in your chest, you're part of the reason we tell these stories, not for views, not for shock, but to wake people up before it's too late. If you want more true stories told with care, real cases, real emotion, and real truth, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell so you never miss a story that matters. And if you're watching right now, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what do you think was going through Deonte's mind that day? When the gunfire stopped, the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the world had stopped breathing. Dina Taylor, mother of 5, daughter, nurse, friend, was gone. Just like that, news of her death rippled across her neighborhood. But this wasn't just gossip or whispers behind front doors. This was a shudder that shook people to their core, because everyone knew her. And no one, not a single person, could make sense of what had just happened. People gathered outside her home. Some hugged, others cried. But most just stood there, staring at the street where she died, like maybe if they looked hard enough they could undo it. And then came the children. 5 kids, some too young to fully understand what was going on, others old enough to feel it, all of it. That gutting silence where their mother's voice used to be. Her oldest daughter, heartbroken and shaken, stepped up in ways no child should have to. She created a GoFundMe to help with funeral expenses. But her message said so much more than just a request for money. It was a cry from a broken place, a young woman who had just lost her best friend, her anchor, her example. People donated, strangers shared the link, and slowly word began to spread far beyond Maryland. But while the community mourned, the justice system began to move. Deonte Sims sat in custody. No tears, no pleas, no frantic justifications, because he didn't deny what he did. In fact, he admitted to it. In the cold, unblinking light of an interrogation room, he confessed to pulling the trigger. He shot Dina. He barricaded himself. He fired at police. He knew it all. And yet, no remorse. That's what made it harder to stomach. He wasn't some wild-eyed stranger off the street. He was the man who said he loved her, and he ended her life like it meant nothing. The prosecutors built their case fast. The evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses, surveillance, ballistics. And the confession sealed it. But the real weight of this story isn't in what he said. It's in what he took. This wasn't just a murder. This was a calculated execution of control. And here's something chilling from a behavioral standpoint. Men who commit intimate partner homicide rarely do so out of rage alone. It's often about ownership, a twisted belief that the woman belongs to them, and if they can't have her, no one can. Deonte didn't just want Dina to hurt, he wanted her erased. And here's the part no one likes to talk about. There were probably signs, small moments, red flags, gut feelings, all of it. But Dina, like so many women, might have convinced herself it was just stress, just pressure, just temporary. Because that's what love does when it's twisted into fear. It makes you second-guess your own survival instincts. Let's pause right here. If you've ever watched someone dim themselves for a partner, if you've ever seen someone explain away bad behavior, if you've ever said, "She's strong, she'd never let that happen to her," then understand this. Strength doesn't stop bullets, and silence doesn't prevent tragedy. Dina deserved a future. She deserved to see her children grow up, to dance at their weddings, to breathe in the quiet joy of a Sunday morning. But instead, she became a statistic, another name in a system that doesn't move fast enough. If you're still with me, thank you, because telling her story matters, keeping her name alive matters. And if this part hit you hardest, tell me in the comments, what do you think drives someone to destroy the person who loved them most? Why would someone who lived with you, ate with you, laughed with your children, wake up one day and decide you don't deserve to live? The answer is terrifying because it's not random. It's not about snapping. It's about patterns. Calculated, layered, invisible patterns that build over time, often in silence. And the deeper you look into cases like Dina Taylor's, the more you start to see it. This wasn't just a relationship that turned toxic. It was a slow psychological erosion dressed up as love. Psychologists use the term intimate partner homicide to describe when someone kills a romantic partner or spouse, and in 9 out of 10 cases, the killer is a man. In almost every one of those cases, the warning signs were already there, but not the kind people always recognize, not bruises, not police calls, Sometimes it's the lack of those things that makes it easier to ignore. Before the first threat, before the violence, there's usually coercive control. That's when a partner subtly chips away at your autonomy, tells you who you can see, what to wear, how to speak, punishes you emotionally when you resist, not with fists, but with silence, withdrawal, gaslighting, guilt. It can sound like, "I'm just trying to protect you." You're always overreacting. No one else would put up with you like I do. And here's the chilling part. People like Deonte don't look dangerous. They look reasonable, until they feel like they're losing control. The moment the victim begins to detach, pull away, say no, or reclaim their independence, that's when the danger spikes. Because to an abuser, love isn't mutual. It's possession. It's power. And when that power is threatened, violence becomes their language. Research shows that most intimate partner homicides happen right before or right after a breakup. That period where the victim finally tries to leave is the most dangerous time of their life. The decision to survive can get you killed. That's the sick logic abusers like Deonte operate on. If they can't own you, they'll destroy you. These aren't wild theories. They're psychological patterns repeated in case after case after case. And that's what makes this story so disturbing. Because it's not about one broken man. It's about a blueprint of violence that far too many women live inside of. How do we break that pattern? If you've ever watched someone shrink to keep the peace, if you've ever bitten your tongue so they wouldn't blow up, if you've ever felt love turn into leverage, please don't stay silent. Comment below. What's one thing you think society gets wrong about domestic abuse? Let's start that conversation right here, right now. In the courtroom, everything feels official. Cold walls, fluorescent lights, folders, forms, and a judge seated behind a bench. And yet, no matter how many years someone gets, it never feels like enough. When Deonte Sims stood before that judge, he wasn't the man Dina once held hands with. He was a convicted killer, a man who had taken a mother away from her children, a man who fired not only at the woman he claimed to love, but at officers who came to stop him. There was no drawn-out trial. He confessed. There was no doubt. In 2022, Deonte was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He was also ordered to undergo mental health treatment, complete a batterer's intervention program, and follow years of supervised probation after release. To some, that sounded like justice. But to Dina's family, it sounded like too late. Dina's death didn't end when she took her last breath. It rippled through bedrooms where children used to feel safe, through empty seats at school functions, through family dinners that suddenly had one chair no one could look at. Her children lost their mother, not to illness, not to accident, to violence, to betrayal, to a moment that none of them saw coming, and yet will never be able to forget. Can a prison sentence repair that? Can any punishment undo what was done? No judge, no verdict, no sentence brings her back. People always talk about the crime, the gun, the motive, the arrest. But what about the 10-year-old who now cries when she hears loud voices? What about the 17-year-old who now doesn't trust anyone who says, "I love you"? What about the child who wakes up on Mother's Day and remembers the last hug they never knew was the last? These are the invisible life sentences, and they don't come with courtroom resolutions. But here's what people need to know. Dina Taylor was more than her ending. She was a woman who worked hard, gave selflessly, and raised 5 beautiful souls. She was the kind of person who saw good in people, even when they didn't always deserve it. And her story is not just about how she died. It's about what we can learn from how she lived. If Dina's story moved you, so share it. Not just this video, but the truth inside it. Talk about coercive control. Ask your loved ones the hard questions. Check on your quiet friends, the ones who smile through pain. You never know what's really going on behind closed doors, and if this entire story made your heart ache, then help us keep her memory alive. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling us What does justice really mean when a life is already gone? Because here we don't just report what happened, we ask why it keeps happening and how we stop it. See you in the next one.